Annyeonghaseyo, welcome to Afternoona Delight, where Leah, Megan, and Amy, three American romance novelists discussing all things K-romance from a writer's lens. We fangirl over our favorite actors and actresses, talk up our trope addictions, and nerd out on K-drama deep dives. We'll throw in a few K-pop and K-skincare recs for good measure, because why not ride the Hallyu wave all the way to shore? So grab some tteokbokki and listen to your new favorite unnies.
Hey everybody.
Hello. We don't have a hi there. I'm doing Megan's hello.
Yeah, we don't have
weird.
Yeah, so tonight we are short one host. We do not have Megan with us tonight. We have not one, but two special guests.
Very excited. So to start things off, welcome to Afternoona Delight, Francisca and Jay. How about if you two introduce yourselves? You can say as much as you want as far as like name, where you're from, how long you've been a fan of K-dramas if you'd like, and what is one of your all-time favorite shows, because we have to know if we love the same stuff, because that gets us even more excited.
Hi everyone, my name is Francisca, I'm from Germany. I haven't been actually watching K-dramas for very long. My sister introduced me to them like last Christmas, so not very long at all, but I haven't watched anything else since, so I've been totally hooked. I think we all know the feeling of that, right? So I think my favorite K-drama, it's a tie, unfortunately, between Healer and Rain or Shine, which is also known as Just Between Lovers. So those are my favorites, my absolute favorites.
Okay, well that's really exciting, because we actually are going to do Rain or Shine or Just Between Lovers before year end. It's on our upcoming list. So,
ooh, very exciting.
Yes, and we do love Healer. So cool. And then Jay.
Hi everyone. I go by Jay on my social media accounts, and I'm from Melbourne in Australia, but from the accent you can tell I'm Canadian, and so I moved here 13 years ago. And I've been watching K-dramas since late 2019, I guess, about the same time that I started listening to K-pop. And it was my daughter that introduced me to K-pop, and since then she's kind of moved on to other stuff, and yeah, I'm still with it. So in terms of K-dramas, I guess my favorites, I'm more like into fantasy ones. So Goblin, obviously, and the other one is My Love from the Star, because that is like one of my all-time favorites. I also watch dramas from other countries as well, and I do watch a lot of BLs as well. So I mean, I've watched like Thai ones and Taiwanese and Japanese, etc. And so some favorites there, I mean, are Untamed, and like in terms of Thai ones, Until We Meet Again, etc. So I mean, yeah, I watch a lot of stuff.
Excellent. Well, tonight we are doing the second part in our deep dive of the very popular smash hit 2022 K-drama, which is Extraordinary Attorney Woo. So for any of you who have been hiding under a rock and don't kind of know the premise, Extraordinary Attorney Woo tells the story of Woo Young-woo, who is an autistic lawyer raised by a single father. She gets her first job at Hambara, which is a large Seoul law firm. And, we kind of follow through, her life working at this law firm, with her relationship to her supervisors, her former law school classmate and peer, and then a burgeoning romance with the very, very gorgeous Kang Tae-oh, who plays the character John Ho. And as we talked about last week, if you listened, we did talk a lot about how this really is kind of a legal drama in many ways, with the show really getting into like very finely balanced legal issues and kind of grappling with difficult ethical questions. But tonight, we are really excited to have Jay and Francisca with us, because while I identify personally as neurodivergent, I am not autistic. And so, I want to give the caveat that I understand that like both of you are speaking from your personal perspectives as autistic people, and not on behalf of like the entire autistic universe, because, that doesn't really exist. Before we get into Extraordinary Attorney Woo, what are your thoughts on autistic rep and K-dramas overall? And, are there any shows that you've come across that you kind of want to commend as doing a particularly good job, or kind of want to like do what we kind of call the wag of the finger, where you feel like, they left a little bit to be desired. So, Francisca, any thoughts?
Actually only come across 2 other dramas with characters that are like officially autistic, and that is Rain or Shine, which we've mentioned before, and what is it called? It's Okay Not to Be Okay. And I thought both of these dramas did a really, really, really good job. They're both just side characters, so unlike Extraordinary Attorney Woo, where we've got an autistic main character. But I really loved about both of these shows that there wasn't any judgment towards these characters. They were just part of the, drama family. They were just, like the friends of the leads, and there wasn't, it was just like completely natural that they were the friends of the leads and that they were just who they were.
Great, thank you for that. And then Jay, what about you?
I think like that's the main ones that I remember as well is Woon Sung-tae and It's Okay Not to Be Okay. And there was also the character in Move to Heaven, which I didn't actually finish that series. I think I got about midway through and got distracted, as I sometimes do. But I mean, what I did see, I did like. So, I mean, I thought that had been well done. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that like the Good Doctor spinoff in the US is based on the original Korean version. And maybe there's even like a version before that as well. But I remember seeing clips of the Korean version of The Good Doctor as well. And so I didn't actually watch the entire series of that one, but I did see some clips. And that one also relies on kind of like the savant trope. And so, I mean, I think it's kind of like an early forerunner of some of the stuff that came afterwards. But I mean, we can talk about the savant trope a little bit later. But I mean, that's a little bit problematic in itself. But I mean, I think it was a start, right? So.
And neither of you have seen Boys Over Flowers, correct?
No.
Give a little wag of the finger, because if you watch Boys Over Flowers, which, like, it's a hot mess of a drama, I personally kind of like a lot of it. Just, I don't know why, like if I'm in the right frame of mind, but there is a big wag of the finger where one of the characters in it identifies how they fell in love in like their teenage years with this beautiful young girl who healed them from autism. And that's like basically one of the plot lines.
It could. I will say, like, we don't know what gets lost in the translation either. Because did we watch that one on Vicky?
Amy's being generous.
I know. Yeah. I'm just saying. Like, there are some things that we do miss. I 100% agree that this is very problematic, and it was like really like a throwaway line, like a one-line thing in there, which it was very odd to even have it to begin with, because it was never about that was never like part of the character arc or anything like that. It was just this like one line throwaway about him falling in love. So I'm still not over it. No. I 100% agree. I 100% agree. But I do wonder what the Hangul actually says compared to what we saw.
And if anyone does know, like kind of like, if anyone is, speaks Korean and has the interest in going back and looking at Boys Over Flowers, or, knows, because basically the direct translation that's burned into my brain is, she healed me from the long dark of autism. And I was like, oh, that is definitely not.
Oh.
I mean, the whole drama is problematic in so many ways, yet weirdly addicting. Like, it was one of the first ones that Leah and I watched. Okay, so Jay and Francisca, you are both active on Twitter, which is how basically our paths first crossed. You did a lot of work, quite generously, I might add, to deep dive Extraordinary Attorney Woo. Could you share your social media handles and what folks listening could expect in terms of content if they choose to follow you? And how about Jay? How about if you go first this time?
Okay. My Twitter handle is HallYouLyrabird, and I will spell that out. HallYouLyrabird. I don't know if anyone. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Lyrabird.
I am.
You are? Awesome. Fantastic. I mean, there's so many YouTube videos that you can watch of them mimicking like every sound out there. Like it's just astounding and it's amazing. And they're the most beautiful birds and just their talent at being able to do that. And so, I mean, when I set up the account way back when, I just kind of went with this as a handle because as somebody who masks a lot as autistic, and you do a lot of your life kind of mimicking and masking and trying to fit in. It just seemed natural to actually have like Lyra Bird as part of the handle. It just made perfect sense, right? So that is my Twitter handle. My profile name is Silver-tailed Mochi. So yeah, that's me. And the account, it started as a BTS account, but it's kind of evolved over time. There's still a lot of BTS and the Rose on there, which is one of my other favorites.
Oh yeah, I'm going to see the Rose in November.
Yes, another Black Rose, fantastic. So there's a lot of that content. There's whatever K-drama I'm watching currently, whatever C-drama I'm watching currently. There's tweets about kind of my daily lived experience of autism. And I do a lot of discussions about normalizing talking about mental health and mental health issues. And I, kind of like you retweet like Yibo and Wang Xian as well, like Untamed memes and stuff. So, I mean, that's kind of my account. So, and I love having new followers. And so, yeah, feel free. It would be awesome.
And we will also, for anyone listening who is listening to the handle and is like, oh, I'm driving, I can't write this down or whatever. We'll put this all in the show notes as well so that, everyone listening can make sure to go and give it a follow. And the Lyrebird, I feel like my will actually smugness is, I go to Australia every year. So I'm like, well, actually, I do know that very cool Australian bird. So
I'm so proud of you.
Do you know it? Leah, do you know it from going to Australia, or do you know it because Nick taught you about it in Australia?
I know it because my husband is actually grew up in the rough part of the city that Jay lives in. And up in the mountain, there's this area called the Dandenongs, which isn't far away. And when you go up there, lyrebirds are up there, and you can hear them mimicking camera clicking. Cool. And also they have a song. Their song is mimicry. And so I thought it was really poetic how you kind of were talking about that in terms of, identifying with that as masking through autism, because it is really interesting to hear the bird is a very good mimicker.
It is, absolutely. And if anyone, we're going to get sidetracked talking about lyrebirds now.
I'm for sure Googling it after this, so I'm going to go listen to it. Yeah.
Okay, but no, have a look. I mean, there's David Attenborough stuff. There's all kinds of stuff on YouTube. But I mean, I'm not kidding when I'm saying that their ability to mimic is just astounding. And there's videos of them doing fire engines and camera clicks and chainsaws and building site hammering. They will mimic anything.
It's extraordinary.
So
and they're
it's
beautiful.
Amazing.
So anyway, that was our,
yes.
I like digressing and I like nerding
That's
out,
a good
so.
one. Yeah.
Okay, well, this time, I'm not going to make you have to do some sort of bird metaphor. So what do you have for us in terms of your social media?
Because you didn't say this beforehand, if you had said I needed a bird metaphor, I would have definitely prepared one. So my Twitter handle is Wandering Francie, as in wandering around, and Francie with a Z, as in my name. What to expect from my account? I don't know. Jay and I were kind of laughing about this question when we read it, because we were like, okay, our accounts are not professional accounts. They're just real people's accounts. They're chaos. They have everything we like. So mine is mostly about Ji Chang-wook, which is my favorite Korean actor. My favorite actor, actually. I don't have to put the Korean there. He's my favorite actor. So yeah, I post a lot about him. I do love to deep dive into dramas and kind of look into all the little details and discuss those. I share a lot about autism from other accounts. And I did actually post recently about an autistic character in a K-drama, so I might do more of that.
Was that the Suspicious Partner one?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that was good. So I recommend, yeah, if you're listening, I recommend following both of these women. And really, I think for me, we have a Twitter account for the podcast. I leave it to Megan mostly to run, and I think Amy does too, because personally, I have like a love-hate relationship with Twitter, because sometimes it just feels like it's this like humanity screaming into the void, and I get very depressed. But then sometimes I feel like I find these like nuggets of wisdom and insight that there's just no other way I would have gotten. And so that's kind of how I felt like when I went through and kind of looked at both of your accounts. And so thank you for that, because it felt like that's like the best of Twitter, right? And I think sometimes, when you think of like what's the intention of social media to like bring us together sometimes, I've really felt like that in seeing both of your accounts. So thank you for that.
Aww. That's so kind. I'm so moved. That's so kind. Thank you.
Well, so I think that go ahead, Francisca.
I think for like about the like love-hate relationship with Twitter, I think there's like an aspect to Twitter that's like really, really important to autistic people, to neurodivergent people, to anyone who's like part of a minority. Like I'm not openly autistic in real life. Like only a very few people really know about that. But on Twitter, I'm like like all out there, and I found my community, and I feel safe enough to like talk about these things. So I really love Twitter for that.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, I think that
perspective,
that perspective is great, and I think that it makes me encouraged to say, you know what, because you can curate Twitter to be useful. I think I still just need to like get over the fact that like I'm scarred from like living through like the Trump presidency, and I need to re-energize to the places like you said, where there's people who are out there just putting out good content, and you're going to be able to have like quality conversations. So it's a good reminder, and I need that sometimes.
Like I was gonna say, I'm hoping that we're past the Trump stuff, and I don't want to say that we're emerging out of the pandemic, because it's still going strong, but we're in a different place with it, I guess, that I'm hoping that we're going to start seeing sort of like a rebirth of what Twitter used to be for us, and for, other people who have kind of stepped away for a little bit, because again, like I leave it, like you said, I leave it to Megan to run the Twitter. But then when Sarah told me, first pointed me towards Jay to check out Jay's account, I was like, okay, well, here's some good stuff that I'm missing, because I'm not hanging out here like I used to be. So I do hope that we're seeing, a resurgence of this, content that is meaningful. And I'm happy for you guys, for you folks, that you have found a community there, because that makes me very hopeful.
And this is actually, in reality, this is how I met Amy, who we're talking to tonight, and then our co-host Megan, who's not here, is through Twitter, like circa 2012. Like I was on writer Twitter, basically, and that's like how I've met like most of my good writer friends, was through Twitter, and kind of like people who were like aspiring writers and things like that, and they've become like my great friends.
Even in real life, like we've seen each
really
other
nice.
off screen.
We've seen each other in the real world. Okay, so anyway, digressing aside, I'm pulling it back. So today, as we have these conversations, quite a few things that I kind of want to refer to are things that have been kind of touched on either one of your Twitter channels. And so, Jay, to start, could you describe a little bit about what the double empathy problem is, and then how it relates to extraordinary attorney Woo?
Okay. Thanks. I'm going to probably refer to some notes here while I'm doing that, because it's complex, and I just want to try and make sure that I'm articulating it as correctly as I can. So the double empathy problem is a theory that was proposed by an autistic academic, and his name is Dr. Damien Milton. And he argues that autistic people do not lack empathy, which is a common perception, but rather because we experience the world differently and express emotions differently and interact with others differently and sense the world differently and form relationships differently than neurotypical people do, it makes it tough sometimes for non-autistic people to understand and empathize with us, just as much as we find it tricky to do the same with neurotypical people. And so because of this, this creates a gap or a divide, which he terms a double empathy problem, in which both sides end up experiencing a lack of understanding for the other group. And so even though both sides experience this, they're both not equally affected or impacted in the way as the neurotypical way of communicating and being in the world is seen as the expected way and is viewed as being, like air quote here, normal and correct. And so this kind of leads to autistic ways of being and communicating viewed as pathological and with that kind of lens. And so unless neurotypical people have autistic people in their lives, they often don't learn to understand these autistic perspectives. And so the theory is kind of like a welcome change from looking at autistic communication and ways of being as, looking at it from an idea of defects or pathology. And it underscores the importance of reciprocity and co-creating mutual understanding. And if this theory were more widely recognized, I think it could really change policy and really change autistic lives for the better. And I guess like how it relates to Extraordinary Attorney Wu is that while I was watching it, there were several examples through the series where you could see this double empathy gap and see that it was really apparent. And in the interactions with her father and also with Jung-ho as well. And so, I mean, I mentioned this in the thread, but a couple of examples that just immediately spring to mind are when she went to the company dinner with the after they'd won one of the cases and they had the fancy posh 300,000 won dinner plates. And then she comes home and brings her father gimbap from the restaurant. And he's kind of like, wow, my successful daughter, she went to this fantastic restaurant and what did she bring me? And he opens it and he's looking at it and he's and he's like, oh great, the food I make every day. And I think that was one of the big examples that struck me was that, like he's kind of looking at it as like, why on earth would you bring me this? Like, I make this every day. I run, like this business where that's all I do is make this, and kind of, what on earth? And meanwhile, I mean, she's equating it as, the food that resonates with family and love and safety, and that this is, her favorite. And also, like, she ate it at the place, and so she knows it's good. And so, of course, like, why wouldn't she bring it home? Like, this makes perfect sense. This is like, of course she would bring it home. And so, I mean, that was one of the kind of the examples that struck me. And then, of course, there was like so many from when she was dating Jung-ho and, like when they were having conversations, like especially that one in the street where, they were kind of discussing, like, are we not dating? Like, I was kind of under the impression that we were dating and and she's like, no. And like, are we not? And so, I mean, there was just kind of these miscommunications that were happening. But if you looked at it from each of their perspectives individually, I mean, it made perfect sense to them and with their logic, but it was just, there was just a misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm. Those are really helpful examples for anybody who this is new to. And it was new to me when I was reading your thread. So I appreciate you putting it in the context because I think that's super helpful, that it is really all about perspective. And it's not that any perspective is the right one versus the wrong one. Like, like you're saying, it is just, it's perspective and it's a different way of looking at the situation based on who it is looking at it, which you would hope it would, you would hope that anybody would be able to understand that. But unfortunately, in this case, when it comes to, neurotypical people and sometimes their views of, of neurodivergent, that they don't see this double empathy situation.
Exactly.
And I think like this is like one of the really good examples why social media is so important. Because it's just amplifying everyone's voices and everyone's like, oh, but, like there's a stereotype that autistic people don't, like feel emotion as much. And, all the autistic people on Twitter are just like, what? Like I feel emotion a lot. Like it's so overwhelming. Like where does this even come from, you know, like, and it all comes from scientists from like 10, 15, 20 years ago, or even 5 years ago, who just like, I don't know, who just like never actually talked and listened to any autistic person, but just like saw that the expressiveness in their face was different to what they were expecting, and just like concluded that means they don't feel any emotion. And it's just like, it's one of those really hurtful things, really.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, especially having someone be like, I don't know what it would be like to have someone be like, oh yes, you don't feel emotion. And you're like, well, I really do. So, I mean, like, yeah, that's, you know, yeah, I think that's a really powerful thing to say. And it's true. Yeah, unfortunately, it's true. Like, there's that stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I think going back to what, you know, Francisco was just saying, like, you know, a scientist, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago, like, made this decision. It's because you've also got very likely, you know, the early scientists who were studying, you know, the different ways that the brain work. You've got a neurotypical scientist making these decisions about, you know, a subset of the population that they are not a part of. And so how can you actually know if somebody does not feel the same thing that you feel, because you are not that person? And so I can't say enough about, like, like I said, like, just reading through your threads, like, how much it helped me understand and taught me. And I'm hoping that this is going to have, you know, other of our listeners go to your social media and be a part of the conversation, and a part of hopefully changing the conversation too.
That would be great.
So while it's not realistic for one character or show to encompass the lived reality of all autistic people, representation does matter. So first off, we're curious about how you both feel about a neurotypical actor like Park Eun-bin playing an autistic character. You know, you also mentioned It's Okay to Not Be Okay, where we had Oh Jung-se as Moon Song-tae as well. And we've all had great things to say about that drama, but we want to hear from you, you know, your thoughts on how, whether it's Park Eun-bin's, or, you know, you can go to another autistic character that you've brought up, how the role was written. You know, do you think it comes off as ableist, or through an ableist lens that values autistic people more if they are exceptional in some way? Or, you know, like Jay, like you were bringing up, Francisca, you did too, because you talked about not being open about being autistic outside of social media, except for people you're really close with. Like, do you think that these portrayals are ableist? Are they encouraging masking? Do you see some good representation? And yeah, what do we think about neurotypical actors portraying these people? Francisca, how about if you go first this time? It's
really, really difficult. I think the problem is also, like, how many autistic actors are there actually? I mean, obviously, you know, like, this is the problem, you know, like, if we don't actually, you know, like, encourage them to join the industry and give them roles and things like that, there won't ever be any. But I mean, personally, like, generally, I don't have any problem with, like, neurotypical people playing autistic characters, but that's just my personal opinion. What I feel really, really strongly about, though, and what I thought was kind of lacking with Extraordinary Attorney Woo, was, like, communication about autistic people having been part of the creative process, having been there to kind of, like, advise on the writing, you know, like, having just been involved in, like, you know, like, creating this character and this portrayal, and having just been consulted and, you know, like, just contribute in some way to the making of this show.
That's a really good point. Like, what kind of consultation did they have? I have no idea.
Yeah, and they just didn't clearly say. I mean, she said, like, in one interview that she specifically did not, but this might be lost in translation again, but the English translation said that she had specifically not talked to an autistic person because she didn't want to imitate that one person. I've heard that she studied psychology and that she interacted with autistic people there, but I would have just wished that they would have just, like, communicated really clearly at the beginning look, we talked to these autistic people were involved in the process. We, you know, like we portray this community, you know, we represent this community, and we made sure we show our respect by doing this.
Yeah, like you said, it comes down to having that respect for, you know, lived experience. And so, yeah, and again, this is where sometimes it is tricky too, being, you know, none of us being Korean speakers or anything, is that, you know, we're then relying on translations as well, that like, and that introduces like an element of problematicness too, and that, like, you know, I want to make sure that, like, yeah, before I start kind of like judging or critiquing or calling out, there's times where, yeah, we might be missing some of that nuance as well. So
I think that was kind of a point that we were making when we chatted offline about this as well. And it was just like the importance of having autistic people involved in the production process and as consultants, and, you know, even, you know, hopefully one day as writers, and just how much that would have changed some of the nuance in the drama. And, you know, I think it would have, you know, it would have in fact affected it for the better, that it would have just improved it a lot. And I mean, it is really just common sense that, right, you know, you're writing about a specific group, and, you know, you're depicting them, and just it just makes sense to have them provide their voices. And, you know, even if, you know, we don't have an autistic actor who's portraying the role, but just to have those consultants have that input and have the feedback and all that, I mean, that's just so important. And it's just hard to imagine that you would produce something with, you know, any other group, like, you know, let's just say, like, you know, like an ethnic group, or just, you know, some kind of other production, and where, you know, you have somebody else playing this role, and you also don't have anybody from that particular group, like, you know, on the creative staff, on the process at all. And so, I mean, it is really vital. It is really vital. And I'm hoping that, you know, that there's more, that the times are changing, and that there will be more involvement. I mean, there was the US series, Everything's Gonna Be Okay, which, I mean, that kind of was making some inroads as well. And so, I mean, that's a start, but I mean, I'm really hoping that, like, it'll pick up momentum, and that we'll see more productions in the future that have autistic input somehow, like in the production or in the writing. So,
yeah, I think that would be, I think that's just like the necessary step too. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. And to pivot to something, you know, that is a little bit later, but, you know, is very dear to my heart, is, you know, I feel, I mean, the world's heart, let's be honest here. So, okay, so I'm going to just talk about Kang Tae-oh for a second, because, look, he's gorgeous, and the character of Jun-ho, I feel like, got people talking. And I think something that's interesting is, if Kang Tae-oh was less gorgeous and wonderful and just, like, so sweet, would we like Jun-ho so much? I don't know. So what aspects of his character worked for you, and what didn't?
So, Kang Tae-oh, I like everything about this show. I just feel like a bit conflicted about it. Like, there were good parts, there were not so good parts. I feel like what they were trying to do with his character was, they didn't want him to make too specific with too much backstory, so that people would say, oh, only a person who's gone through XYZ things could be in a relationship with an autistic person. But I feel a bit like, trying to do this is just my guess, they've gone too much the other way and made him completely flat and one-dimensional, and he doesn't seem to have any other attributes than being her boyfriend. And I just, like, was really missing some of that depth in his character to kind of, like, make him feel real. Because now, for me, it felt a bit like, okay, he's kind of, like, too perfect, too magical. Like, there were almost no scenes where he was like, okay, I mean, there were some in the beginning of the drama where he was like, okay, I didn't like this, let's talk about this, let's change this so we can make it work for you know, like, both of us. But I felt like they were not, like doing enough of that, especially in the second half of the drama.
I'm sitting here like just enthusiastically nodding, not that anybody can see, because but I like your perspective on it, because that is not something that I thought of as far as, let's not make him any specific thing so that we can't, generalize and say, like you're saying, only so-and-so, could love, Woo Young Woo. But yes, you're 100% right. He had no dimension. And Leah, like you said, if it wasn't Kang Tae-oh, I would have looked at this character so much differently. But because Kang Tae-oh, just as a beautiful human, is way too charming to watch, like you kind of, a lot of people tend to forgive it and say, like I'm saying, like, I hope they go there in season 2, because he's not realistic right now. He's flat, he's paper thin, and yeah, we have nothing to go on there.
But I mean, this is like the common thing that everyone would think, right? I mean, autism is seen as a disorder, as a disability, like there's always like, why would a neurotypical person, quotation marks, normal person, want to be in a relationship with a disabled person? That's always what people think, right? So that's why I'm kind of like, okay, they try to, do it like this to make him not too specific. But yeah, I think he just needed so much more to his character to actually, feel real and make us feel like, okay, this could actually happen in real life. They did. To me, they didn't manage to do that. But I mean, Jay and I were talking about this. Like, so many autistic people are in long and stable relationships. It's not a problem at all. So many are married and have been for like so many years. It's not an unthinkable thing at all. And maybe if some more autistic people had been involved in the writing process, that this relationship and this character would have come out like in a completely different way.
Can you please be on the writing team for the second season? Because I think you would be a huge help. So,
I mean, to be fair, for the second season, I would kind of like them to break up and her to have a neurodivergent boyfriend, and to just have this kind of fight between them for her, and to just show the differences. And maybe make him learn a little bit, or make them learn a little bit from each other. That would be so fun to watch.
We are manifesting that for the studio to hear our plea.
Absolutely.
Like as a romance writer, I am listening to you, Francisca, and I'm like, that is some excellent romantic conflict. Please make this happen. Jay, how about you?
Well, I think she summed it up really well, because we had talked about this as well previously, and just, yeah, I think we're both equally disappointed with just how one-dimensional he was. And I know I really just wanted some more depth to his character, because we seem to have got so many hints. Like, we got this, this scene with his friends in the bar, with, kind of like all the things his friends were saying, and we got the attitude of his sister, and then we got the people on the street who are kind of like, are you volunteering again? And so, I mean, we had all these hints at these different aspects of his life that that he had before he met her, and his wider social circle, and we never got an answer as to kind of like why he was different and to why he approached the relationship how he did. And I was so curious for it, and I could kind of see where Francisca was going with, they kind of wanted to make him, like the every person, and that there wasn't anything exceptional about him, that it's only natural that, he would have been in this relationship. But at the same time, I also just really wanted, to have some more to go with this character, to just say, okay, look, like, this is a little bit more of his history. This is kind of why he feels like he does. And, and we never got it. So it was really disappointing.
One of the they did the dating thing, right? And they did all her interests and what she wanted to do on all those dates. And then sometime at the end, we got him critiquing this and saying, well, I actually don't like these things. And I just never understood why we didn't get this so much earlier and then got an exchange. Like, why didn't they then do some of his hobbies and interests? We have no idea what they are. And why I was mentioning neurodivergent relationship for season 2. There's something that a lot of autistic people seem to do that's called parallel play, where basically two autistic people share their time and do things together by doing their separate things. So, like everyone could, like both people could be sitting on their laptop and watch like different series and things like that, but still like kind of like hold hands and kind of like laugh together and, like show each other, like their favorite scenes from it, or, like, and it's really, really, really enjoyable. And I just feel like that would have been like...
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, honestly, that's like every day at my house.
And that would have been such a cool... Yeah. And how awesome would that have been as a compromise for them, like for their dates or for spending time together, to just do something like that and still like have quality time, but, like kind of like the autistic way.
If you enjoy our podcast, you have our patrons to thank, at least in part. Afternoona Delight Patreon allows us to keep creating content for y'all to enjoy. Thank you so much to everyone who is supporting us there. And not to brag, but our Patreon community is pretty awesome. And you can join at a tier that feels good to you. Gain access to fun perks like K-drama posts, monthly Patreon-only bonus podcasts, and even a live K-drama support group on Zoom. Because we know firsthand what it's like to have no one to talk to about those crazy plot twists, amazing characters, and all those feelings. And look, no one should have to walk that walk alone. So learn more by visiting afternoonadelight.com. That's www.afternoonadelight.com. And hey, while you're on the website, you can check out Afternoona Delight podcast merch, find links to book recommendations, bop along to our K-pop recs, glow up your skin with K-merch recs, find all of our social media, and a link to our email so you can send us recommendations or feedback. And hey, while you're at it, why don't you pop over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review? It really helps with our discoverability. 감사합니다. So what was a scene or an aspect of the show where you thought that mistakes were made? Like what went wrong and what would you have preferred to have seen happen? And let's go with Jay for this.
I'd say that there's probably a couple of areas, and I think the first one, and I'm going to try and articulate this the best way I can, so bear with me, was the deep pressure scene after the car accident. And I remember watching it the first time, and I was kind of thinking like, wow, I wish they had kind of like a caveat or an asterisk or something on the bottom of the screen that kind of said, this is, like a fictional representation, please don't use this in real life unless, you know the person well and have given their consent beforehand, et cetera, et cetera. Because using deep pressure or physically restraining an autistic adult who is having a meltdown is complex. There's debate as to whether even, that's that should be used or not. And there's also some adults just can't tolerate it. I mean, I mentioned this to Francisca that if that had been me in that situation, that would have just made everything worse for me. It just would have exacerbated everything so much more. And I would not have found it calming or helpful whatsoever. So, I mean, that was kind of okay, I could see why they wrote that in there and what they were trying to do. And, it kind of, portrayed him in this really good light of he's done his research and he's being supportive and he's caring and this is really a good thing. But at the same time, it's just I didn't want people that were watching this who didn't have a lot of experience with autistic people in their life to kind of take this away as as a tip of okay, this is kind of what you need to do if you ever encounter this or something. I was kind of whoa, okay, wait a minute. No. And so I wish that had been just either addressed or even in the debrief where they were kind of talking about it in the street afterwards. And, he mentioned the calming chairs in France or whatever and made the comment of, I can be your calming chair, that was, that was kind of cute actually. But anyway, like when he's saying that to her, and just, if they could even have just like kind of said something of, that she said like, yeah, this works for me, but I know it doesn't work for all people or something. Just anything like that would have been really helpful. And so that was one thing. The other thing, I guess, was just the way they really wanted to try and portray autism in kind of almost like in its best light. And I think that Francisca mentioned this as well when we were talking about it, was that, we didn't see a lot of kind of like her internal struggle going on, like where we could kind of see where things were really, really difficult, like aside from, the really obvious meltdowns and, the scene with the accident or the scene in the courtroom or whatever. But there's so much that it takes place with autistic people and internal struggles and everything. Like, oh, sorry, I'm having a really hard time trying to get this out.
No, you're doing great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're doing.
I mean, I can explain it too if you don't
the
want
internal
to.
struggle. Okay, can you explain it? That would be so helpful. Can we tag team? Thank you.
No, it's just like, yeah, now I don't know what to say. No, it's just lots of her job is really, really stressful. She doesn't mask as much as like other characters, but I could just like, they did this really, really, really well in like It's Okay to Not Be Okay, to just show that autistic people, that this often, obviously I can't speak for everyone, seem to need kind of like time to recharge after a stressful day more than neurotypical people would. Like when I had a really stressful day at work, I go home, and if it was really stressful and if I had to like mask a lot and like kind of like smile a lot, make a lot of like eye contact, all these things, they're so incredibly exhausting. I sometimes don't have the energy to cook, I don't have the energy to clean, I don't have the energy to shower or anything like that. And it's just something that just comes with this whole autism thing. And I just feel like she's got such a stressful job. She works how many hours every day? I just feel like there should have been like some sort of mention or some sort of like scene where we can kind of like see her just be by herself in her room, just like do her stuff, not interact with anyone, like just like read up about whales or something like that, and just like show that she needs this time to kind of like recover. And the other thing is, I think this whole thing about executive dysfunction that a lot of autistic people experience, like just like having to do things but just not being able to start the task and all these kind of things. There's so many things that just like make a lot of autistic people struggle with daily life and with like normal job life. And they were just like completely excluded. Like she was so like Woo was so good at her job, like she just like took it all in a stride and just did it and just did as much work as everyone else, which just at least to my experience didn't feel very real. And I think it would have been really, really good if they had kind of like shown this every now and then.
Yeah, I keep going back to what you were saying, earlier, to what you're both saying earlier about like, what sort of consultation do they even have when they're doing this? And I think it's pretty clear that they didn't have very much, if any at all. And if there is going to be a season 2, I really hope that they are listening to the autistic community and what you are saying about this, in hopes that, because they did leave so much out, because they did leave so much flat, for so many of the characters. I'm hoping that voices will be heard and we're going to get what you all think are missing into the next season, but we'll see.
A lot of the like autistic representation things that we know from ourselves, that we're related to, that like that family members related to or friends related to, and it's all different things, but like I think there was like a very positive response from the autistic community about a lot of the stuff that they did being really good, and people related to it. Like for me, like the headphones, I don't go anywhere without my headphones anymore. Like it just makes life so much more pleasant. or the scene like at the where they eat at the sister's place, and like she kind of like tries so hard, and it might seem ridiculous, but it really isn't ridiculous. Like, I mean, I don't just eat gimbap, obviously I eat a lot of things, but I couldn't ever eat something that I can't eat. I can't force myself. I would literally throw it up. So I really, really, really related to that scene. So there are just lots of things that were really well done. And just because, I mean, we've talked a lot about what was missing, but the things that they did do were generally really good. It was just that they were incomplete, and that was part of the, writing problems, that they were concentrating too much on other stuff and things like that. But, there were a lot of really, really good things in this drama.
I agree. And I think, like Francisca was saying, that if we it sounds like we're being really negative about it, and that we're kind of really taking it apart, but they did do a lot of things really well. And I did read so many tweets about how it had resonated, like the portrayal had resonated, like that the traits were being recognized by people, and that they were seeing themselves represented. And this seemed to like really strike a chord with a lot of the people that were tweeting about it. And so, I mean, in that terms, I mean, it was a win, really. I mean, some people were really quite, so moved about it, and that, that they were seeing some aspect of themselves being portrayed, and that it resonated with them. And so, I mean, that was a positive. And so, I mean, yeah, it was well done in that way. Like, I did enjoy the drama. I mean, if we're going to ask, like, if do we enjoyed it? I enjoyed it, and I would still recommend it. I mean, it's probably not a favorite, but I mean, I would. And it's just for that representation, and just for the ensuing conversations and discussions that arise from people who are watching it. I mean, that was it. And I just wanted to add as well, since I know that we're running a bit short on time. A couple of things that I did like about it that relate to kind of like the one of the aspects with the dating that was going on, and with that whole storyline with Junho and everything, was that I'm glad that they gave her a love interest. I'm glad that they that in the storyline with the dating, that we had these aspects of her having agency and control, and that he was respecting her boundaries, and that this was like, this was huge, and this was kind of like, that really resonated with me, and I really liked seeing that the way that they had done that. And I mean, like, there was quite a few like little scenes and stuff where you could kind of see that play out, where he was respectful of her boundaries and respectful of her needs. And I mean, I thought that was well done. So
yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, I mean, it's like almost revolutionary to have a main character like this, a female main character. Like, autism is stereotypical, always like a male thing. So to have like a female character as the main character of a show, with agency, with a love interest, is just so amazing to see. So I definitely agree. I would recommend it just for that, even if some parts of the show are flawed, but it's just really, 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 really good for that.
I love that you're saying that, because that is pretty much the conclusion that we came to last week when we were talking with Sarah, because Sarah had a lot to say, similar to what you both are saying, but she's like, at the end of the day, we have an autistic East Asian woman as the lead of a drama, like it all revolves around her, and she gets a romance, and she's like, that's huge as far as representation.
It is.
And so even if they didn't get the representation 100% right, or even 60% right, whatever it might be, that the representation is there, and it's a step forward. And like you both have said, it is causing us to have conversations, which I think is only going to hopefully help us keep putting one foot in front of the other and doing better.
Yeah, and I mean, there were like, I loved the first 4 episodes of it, like how she was in the drama kind of like explaining some parts of her autism to the people she, like just met, her new colleagues and things like that. And I really, really loved how they did that, and how they like explained the stuff about Hans Asperger, and how, well, controversy that is, and that it's not used anymore and things like that. That's never, like people were like agreeing on Twitter. That's like a first, like in media that anyone's ever said this out loud like that. So it's been really, really good in explaining quite a few things of, like quite a few things of autism really well, and showing it really well too through the acting.
Well, this was fantastic. Like, I cannot thank you two enough. I wish we could do something like this for every drama. Get people to come in who, have a lived experience, especially, I mean, okay, maybe we can't get people to come in for a lived experience as a goblin, but I mean, I would be all for it. I would 100% be all for it.
This conversation has also kind of spanned the globe literally tonight. And so, we have Jay in Australia. And then, Francisca, can you just kind of say what time it is for you right now?
Shall I round it up? It's 4 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. So, I mean, she's pulled an all-nighter to be here tonight to talk about this. And I just think that, again, that is... like a big debt of gratitude to you for being willing to do that, because I mean, I don't know. I feel like I need to send you an edible arrangement or something.
Send you a nap.
The thing is, we feel the same, Yeah, no, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, and any Kong Teo juju I can send out
let
there
them write
to the universe
tonight. That would be the best. That would be the best case scenario for season 2.
All right. Well, on this note, normally how we close every episode out is with an annyeong. So we invite you to do that with us. It's very cringy, but we like it that way.
It's it's to bookend our show. We have an opening that's pre-recorded, and then we annyeong at the end.
So if you'd like to close it out with us, we'll
annyeong.
say annyeong.
Annyeong.
Awesome.
Yay. Kamsahamnida. Thank you for listening to Afternoona Delight. Where can you find us outside the pod? Head on over to afternoonadelight.com. That's AFTERNOONADELIGHT.com. You'll find links to all our social media, our book recs, K-pop and K-skincare recs, and if you want even more Afternoona Delight, because really who doesn't, you can join our Patreon, where you can choose the patron level that's right for you. Join in daily K-drama conversations, listen to bonus podcast episodes just for patrons, and participate in our monthly live K-drama support group via Zoom. We can't wait for you to be a part of the community. Until next time, annyeong!